The Final Destination franchise may be fictional, but it's actually an amalgamation of two true stories. In each Final Destination film, a character has a psychic premonition about an impending disaster, allowing that character and several others to cheat death. But as time goes on, death finds them in unexpected and inventive ways. The idea is that you can never escape death, and if you do, it's only a matter of time before death catches up with you. It's a unique idea for a horror series, but could it be true in our world as well? It all began with a woman vacationing in Hawaii in the late 1980s who received a call from her mother, warning her not to get on her flight back the next day, stating that she had a bad feeling about it. Personally, I would also have a bad feeling that the airline was going to charge me $300 to change my flight, but in this case, superstition won out. The girl took her mother's advice and changed flights. When she arrived at home, she learned that her initial flight had crashed and her mother's apparent premonition had possibly saved her life. This was the story that screenwriter Jeffrey Reddick read in a magazine, which became the alleged inspiration for Flight 180, a rejected spec script for the 90s sci-fi series The X-Files, which he eventually reworked into Final Destination. He's never spelled out which specific crash his story is based on, but it's most likely Aloha Airlines Flight 243, which went down in April 1988 on the way from Hilo to Honolulu. Passengers witnessed the roof rupture, and 23 minutes in, it was torn off the plane. One flight attendant was swept out of the vehicle, but that was the only fatality. No airline customers lost their lives. If this was the flight that Reddick read about, the woman who changed her travel plans did not actually cheat death. However, the true inspiration for the movie is disputed. There are many who say it's actually based on TWA Flight 800. TWA Flight 800 lines up with that pretty closely. It's a flight from New York City to Paris, it left in the evening, and 12 minutes after takeoff, it exploded and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, leaving no survivors of the 230 passengers. Of those whose lives were lost, 16 students and 5 chaperones from a Pennsylvania high school French class were on board. It's pretty clear that at least the circumstances of Voulez Flight 180 in Final Destination were inspired by the crash of TWA Flight 800 in 1996, even if screenwriter Jeffrey Reddick insists otherwise. When the film came out, Roger Ebert even criticized it for exploiting a real tragedy for a campy horror premise. Reddick pushed back in an interview with Bloody Disgusting, saying, "When the movie came out in 2000, a lot of reviewers said the story was inspired by the real-life crash of TWA Flight 800 in 1996. I got flack for that, but I actually wrote this in 1994. When Reddick says 1994, he's referring to his original X-Files spec script, where Dana Scully's younger brother had the premonition on a Newark to Boston flight. By the time New Line bought the idea in 1997, the script had morphed into a story about a French class trip to Paris, similar to the doomed JFK to Paris flight of TWA 800 the year before. Whether intentional or not, the parallels are hard to ignore. As for why the characters became teens, Reddick told Consequence.net that teenagers were hot again in horror films. New Line wanted to make them all teenagers. Scream had just blown up the box office the previous year, and studios were chasing the teen horror craze. The Final Destination franchise has plenty more eerie parallels to the real world. Heck, there was even a screening of Final Destination Bloodlines where a chunk of the roof fell down on an audience member.